Good morning and welcome to the latest webinar in the Calix series. Today is a communications webinar. We're going to be having a chat with Audrey Barucci. She is the marketing manager, the general marketing manager at Calix. The information we're going to have a chat about today is kind of specific towards the water industry or councils. We're going to talk about communication styles, the tools that you could possibly use, and getting used to dealing with a bit more online communication and the strategies around that. So without further ado, I'll introduce Audrey and we'll get right into the topic. But if you are more interested in a bit of a deep dive when it comes to topics around communication and the specific techniques that Calix and we are using for developing new communication styles within this new normal, please jump in the chat. This is a live webinar, so we're going to try and get to questions at the end, but don't hesitate. Please put in some questions as we're going, and we'll definitely get to them. All right, so let's jump into it. Hi, Audrey.
Hi, everyone. Very happy to be participating to this webinar. It's a privilege.
Yeah, thank you. As you would be aware, I mean, we're in quite a different situation now. So face-to-face communication is becoming a lot more difficult with the situation with social distancing and also isolation of some workplaces, just to make sure that people who are in essential industries don't get sick, whether it's food manufacturing or it could be the water industry. They're all absolutely essential industries. So we thought that we might be able to have a chat with Audrey, who's a communication expert, about ways that Calix has adapted or responded to the current situation, but also ways, tips and tricks that anyone can employ within their normal day jobs to really get the situation obviously not back to normal, but certainly improved from where we're currently at. We talked previously about conferences being cancelled and things like that, so this face-to-face interaction is certainly reduced, and this is exactly why we've set up these webinars. So hopefully we'll be able to provide a little bit more information to you. But Audrey, just I wanted to get a bit of your understanding about how the current situation has affected Calix and how the company has responded.
Yes, it's a good question. So I think Michael, like everyone else, we went through a bit of a period of a shock, and so the first thing we put in place really was to meet. So we scheduled daily executive management meetings. So for me in Queensland, some of them were at 5 or 6 a.m. in the morning. But I did wake up every morning religiously because I found that was the best way to adapt, to react, to be proactive. So we found that, in the first week, it was really about updating each other on what was happening, not just in Australia, but in the other areas where Calix operates. So the US and Europe, and so really getting together and just giving each other a bit of a round of updates on each region, on each department. Obviously, priority number one is to make sure that our people were safe and well. So that was the first thing. The second thing with those meetings was to try to identify the priorities. Yeah. And the first priority for us was really about safety. And so it was, how were we going to be able to react, to be able to continue to supply our products and services in the safest way possible.
Mm. Yeah,
so that was really, the first reaction. What was to get together, communicate, collaborate, so that we could be really proactive in responding to an extremely changing environment. Every single day, every morning I would wake up and something new would have happened.
Yeah.
So I think, it is a webinar about communication, and I think in times of crisis, communication and collaboration is extremely important. And that's, that is really what we did and how we adapted at Calix in the early days anyway.
Absolutely. That's a really good point, highlighting the fact that it really is a safety, safety first type of situation. Although we've got a responsibility to maintain the services that we provide. As you said, making sure that everyone is healthy and safe during this time is critically important.
Yeah.
So how did Calix respond in terms of dealing with the customers' concerns, especially around that? Because they've obviously, especially with water authorities and things, they've got concerns around continuity of supply and making sure that that their operations can continue running. So do you want to explain?
I talked about different steps. So getting together as a team was first step, but absolutely, Michael, the second priority was our customers, and obviously asking ourselves how we would continue to supply. Very early on, we realized as an essential service provider that our services were going to continue, but obviously some of our customers expressed some concerns about how we would continue to supply. Yeah. And so very quickly, it was about reassuring our customers. And I'm sure you could talk a little bit more about our supply chain, but we have a very robust supply chain here in Australia for Calix. We own a mine. We really own the entire supply chain, and that really allowed us to reassure our customers and tell them that we would be able to continue to supply in the safest way possible. And one of the way we did that from a communication perspective was to get our CEO behind a camera. And I think from what I remember, he had to do the video in his camper van. So everyone was really trying to adapt to this new norm of communicating. But he did. He put himself in a camera, and we put him on YouTube. And the idea was really to reassure our customers and tell them and deliver a message in a new way, really.
Yeah, I did. I remember seeing that video on YouTube, and it's strange times we're in with CEOs sitting in caravans having a chat. But it's quite a different situation. I think I worked with you on a video not too long ago, which was around the site tour, and that kind of did detail the methods that Calix goes around about that continuity of supply. So, as you mentioned, the having the mine site has been a huge benefit to us, because it means that the raw materials that we rely on are not potentially being restricted from import restrictions or capacity constraints due to the raw materials that might be coming out of different countries, but also around the stockpiles that we maintain on site and the social distancing that we have implemented at the workplace to make sure that those type of things, if we do get affected by the current pandemic, that at least we've got isolated pockets within our workplaces in order to make sure we've got the people to keep operating our factory while if we're affected at all. So I think
and again, I think really communications really played a role in this. It was this message really came from the feedback that we were getting from the sales team. We need a message out to our customers. Our customers are expressing concern. So this feedback, followed through, and then marketing got involved, and then, eventually our CEO. So it was really a collaborative effort. And that's where I see, communications really have a massive role to play in crisis. And not just, from an external point of view, but really internally, making sure that everyone keeps communicating quite often and regularly and consistently across different departments that were, all affected. Operations are affected, sales is affected, and so it's how can you improve the way you communicate so that you are collaborating better and you are reacting better to the situation.
Yeah, you're right. It's certainly a time for adaptation and change, isn't it? I know that we had to figure out new ways to be able to do contactless deliveries and manage sanitation of IBCs and things like that. So that was was a rather interesting change from our operations perspective.
Yeah. Well, it's exactly right. I think after this period of adaptation, or I would say, okay, let's get together, share our feedback or our knowledge of the situation we're in. Find, I suppose that it was also about, what are the priorities? So safety of our people was key, safety of our deliveries and our customers was key as well. And then I think the second step, or the next step to all of that was, how do we keep communicating with our customers and partners? And I think that was a big challenge. It was a big challenge, and we had to innovate extremely quickly. And I suppose, it's pretty much how this whole webinar series was born. It was out of, asking ourselves that question, how are we going to be able to communicate with our customers when we can't go and visit them anymore?
Yeah, it's it's certainly a challenge, even like internally within the workplace, and being able to communicate these things without being face to face, or being able to talk with a customer without actually being able to shake hands and be there. So what kind of tools did you put in place, or have you leveraged within Calix in order to facilitate that what would feel like more face-to-face communication?
So I'd say it was really a transition from physical communication or more traditional, if you like, to digital, which we were already doing at Calix, thankfully. I think if we hadn't had all the background work and the foundations that we have with a good CRM and some social media presence, it would have been a little bit more challenging. So it was good to be able to leverage that. But I think what the main things we did was, I think it's always about the objective. What are you trying to achieve? And so what we were trying to achieve was communicating with our customers, very important. Communicating amongst ourselves, and increase collaboration, and also sharing, doing what we do best, which is not supply MHL, but solving challenges. And so the question we really asked ourselves was, how are we going to be able to keep solving our customers' challenges without going there, without being able to go and meet with them face to face as regularly as before?
Yeah.
And the way we tackled all of that was, obviously the collaboration amongst the sales. We put very quickly, we put in place a lot of online tools. So online meetings, regular teams get together, whether they are, proper meetings or just, catch up coffee breaks or whatever you want to call them. One of the tips we've been given to all of our people, and I keep saying to everyone, is try to use the video. There's some stats I looked at before this webinar, and people will remember about 20% of what they hear. They'll remember about 30% of what they see, and they'll remember 70% of what they hear and see.
Wow, that's a bit of a difference, isn't it? Yeah.
Exactly. And I think when communicating with people in a digital space, just remember that putting your face is maybe a little bit daunting, go, oh, I don't really want to be in the camera and I can see my face on the screen and I don't really like it. And that's everyone really, but it makes a big difference, in how much people will remember you, will remember the message you've delivered. And so it just, it's again about, increasing the communication will mean better collaboration, better sharing of knowledge, etc. So it will increase your efficiency no matter what.
Yeah.
The webinar tool for us was really a way to, and it was a really good learning, actually. It was a really good learning experience for all of us, at Calix. It was a way, how can we keep delivering our knowledge and our expertise to our customers without going there, without seeing them and keeping them safe. And so we put in place these webinars, and what I've learned along the way was, a webinar is something that you deliver, and someone can be live and they can interact with you, which is pretty much the equivalent of going there and seeing them face to face, but it can also be something that they can watch later on. And I think that's the biggest difference between a real meeting where you go there for a period of time and then you leave and it's gone forever, whereas a digital meeting or a digital webinar actually stays. And so this knowledge sharing can really flow across and help other people. Can be shared amongst themselves. Say if someone attended the webinar and thinks that some of the things we talked about could benefit to their team, they can actually share the content. So I think that was a really good I think learning from my perspective anyway. And when I look at the number of views we're getting on those videos, for example, I realize that some people have become really, I don't know, really our audience that really like to interact with us, and they'll be asking new questions, and through the series they've got to know you a little bit better, which is really nice to watch. But then I see a lot of other people watching the videos later on and potentially commenting or contacting us, and I think that's a great advantage that we have, or that the digital communication has on top of of just communicate or sharing a message.
Yeah, I think it's certainly something that that companies, I mean, Calix obviously is working to do that, but also individuals could potentially leverage that as well. I mean, in some ways, even individuals, whether it doesn't matter who you are within the workplace, you do have to communicate with whether it's a manager or a peer, and you're trying to, I suppose, persuade people of your ideas. I know some people use the word selling, trying to sell your ideas to people. Some people object to that kind of terminology, but it is something that people need to think about, even from a personal level, especially now, because they're not necessarily getting that face-to-face interaction that they used to be able to demonstrate, their capability to, whether it's their manager or it could be somebody else within their department. Or even wider within the organisation. So, is that something that people can leverage within their own? I suppose it's called personal brand in order to.
Yeah, I think so, Michael. I think the one thing that I like about the term social selling is that it would potentially relate to what is called social media, and there is a lot of reluctance in the business world to use social media for lots of different reasons, and I don't think that's reasonable, because social media is happening. Social media is growing, and no matter whether we like it or not, if we want to keep ahead, we have to be on social media. We have to have a presence on social media. My view on social media is make sure you pick the right media, the right channel.
Yeah.
Being on social media doesn't mean, I've got to be everywhere and all over the shop and whatever. It's about picking the right channel for what you want to do. And obviously, Facebook and LinkedIn are very different. They're the obvious ones. One is a very professional channel, the other one is a very personal channel. But it doesn't mean, if you're in a business environment, that you will not use Facebook, for instance. And I'll give that example of an industry group that I found on Facebook for wastewater operators. And I find this group quite fun, to be honest, and I'm very happy to be part of it, because there's a lot of jokes, there's a lot of knowledge sharing, there's a lot, and it's you are communicating with your peers. You're chatting and exchanging relevant or not so relevant comments to people that actually understand your world and what you're doing on a day-to-day basis. And if you have a question, and I see in this group, for instance, people are rocking up to their site, and there's something happened and they don't really know what it is. Take a photo, put it on this group, and then all of a sudden you've got 10, 20 people that are like, oh yeah, I've had that on my site, and this is what I did, and it didn't work, or it worked, etc. So I think there's a lot of advantages in participating to those groups on social media. But you talked about personal brand, and I think that was a really good comment as well. If you decide to go on social media, which I think you should, don't go on 10 channels, pick one and start there, and just make sure that you keep it active, right? Because it's important that you're building that personality on social media. And it doesn't mean that you need to build a character that does not exist. just be you. But there's the you physical, and there's the you digital. The you digital is basically has the ability to do all those things that we've talked about webinars. That means they can share their own expertise, they can share their own knowledge, they can make a joke, just be authentic.
Yeah.
But just remember that this stays. So if you have, I don't know, if you've just found something on your site and you think that could benefit the rest of the councils and water authorities in Australia, well, that is probably a great piece of content to put out there. It's authentic, it's you, it's your site, and you're doing it for the right reasons, which is sharing that across for the good of the community, for the good of other councils and water authorities that may have the same problem. So I think the same rules apply. A company presence or company's presence and your personal presence on social media. I'd say just be who you are, be authentic, be honest, and stop being so scared about social media. It's happening anyway. So
it is something that it's something that people worry about, isn't it? So being able to you hear stories all the time about people expressing themselves online and potentially being shot down just for expressing what they believe in or their own views. So obviously, if you're going online, it's probably important to be professional and put forward, I suppose, the same face that you would, in a workplace as you would online.
Exactly.
Right?
Exactly. I've heard horrid stories of people behaving really badly at Christmas parties or God knows what, right?
Yeah.
And it's the same thing, right? Physical world, digital world, just think, and the things that you wouldn't do in the physical world, well, just do not do them in the digital world. The comments you would not make face to face, well, don't make them on social media. Just be you on social media, and it should be fine. And if you're really inappropriate in the physical life, well, chances are you'll probably be inappropriate on the digital life. So, but if you're if you are being honest and true to your values, I don't think you should be scared of social media at all.
Okay, so obviously, coming out with being able to share stories and things like that, but I suppose companies are probably also going to have to become a little bit more comfortable with the idea of their employees going online and potentially seeking help for solutions, whether it's from suppliers or other people within the industry. You did mention LinkedIn groups or Facebook groups, which tend to be a little bit more closed as well, which is helpful.
So a lot of those groups are closed, so you have to request to join them. And there are some admin people that are really looking at your profile and seeing whether you fit in. And so that in order to avoid the spamming for a start, and also there's people just have nothing else to do than commenting and things like that. So which you don't really want to have in this group. The group is about sharing knowledge between a community that has the same issues, the same challenges. Whether that's on Facebook or LinkedIn, you'll find that some of these groups are closed. And the other beauty of that is whatever you're posting within those groups is not necessarily going to appear on your general page, right? So it's really, it's a little bit like when you're going to an industry event or an industry conference, and you're having, those networking events or those meetings or lectures, and you're really sharing things, and whatever you're sharing is for that group only, and it doesn't really have to go out, to the public domain. So that's something to keep in mind as well.
So I suppose that certainly gives people an avenue to be able to, I suppose, number one, help other people share their expertise, but also to be able to demonstrate their competence to other people within the industry and build that personal brand. So it's a great...
And a network, Michael, and a network. I think it is not because we cannot meet face to face as often as we used to that we should not keep on networking. Networking is extremely important in the corporate world, in the business world, in the community world. Making relations with people is extremely important. And if we can't do it face to face, and I mean, let's be honest, the current situation is here to stay for a little while. Even though things are getting a little bit easier, we don't really know how the situation is going to evolve. And I think there's advantages in using leveraging the technology to network amongst your peers, with other similar organizations, whether that's another council, another water authorities, but also people who have the same titles as you, so they basically facing the same challenge, day-to-day operational challenges. So yeah, there's a lot of advantages in networking online. I have found personally that people have been more active on social media in the last few weeks, so it is a good platform to meet new people, to connect, and maybe to schedule a talk like the one we're just having now, where you're sharing your video and essentially you're making a new friend. So it's there's a lot of possibilities, really.
Yeah, absolutely. We've talked a bit about social media, but I suppose more traditionally thinking about email, and how, well, I suppose how Calix has worked with email since the crisis hit, but email's been a bit more traditional in terms of their electronic communication in the past. So how have we handled it in terms of communicating with customers via email, or what are your tips in terms of being able to handle email in this kind of new situation?
It's an excellent point. So emails, I think the communication to our staff here at Calix was quite clear. It's try to avoid emails as much as you can. Emails, like it is the case for any digital communication, has its use, has its limitations. An email is great when you are sharing a huge amount of information, or not a huge amount, but something that you really need people to open, read, and reply to, etc. And maybe a platform where, say if I'm receiving an email, I'll take the time to digest the information I'm seeing. I'll take the time to reply to that, to the questions that may have been asked in the email. But I don't think it's a good way to share ideas, to share knowledge, etc. Also in emails, you are missing on the reaction of people, and that in a lot of communications aspect, it's not a very good thing. Sometimes you will communicate something to someone and you will see, depending on their reaction, that that it's a message that resonated with them or didn't, or upsetted them or whatever. And I think managing emotions, understanding emotions, and staying conscious of emotions of the person you're engaging with is extremely important when communicating. So my tips for emails would be, we're being spammed by the amount of emails we're getting, and this was even happening before COVID, right?
I have noticed that. I've noticed since this thing hit, every man and his dog has jumped on the email, and I'm receiving thousands of emails. It's a bit overwhelming, yeah.
And I had an email that came through this morning, which I read at about 10 o'clock, and I should really have seen that email at about 8:30 when I started. And I didn't, and then I thought, well, it's just because it was lost in the chaos of so like I get up in the morning, I open my inbox like everyone else, and I just go, oh, where do I start? And so by the time I've just finished reading the emails, it's already 10 a.m. and I haven't really done anything else. So I think really emails, just remember what an email is used for, and just being really mindful of that. And like I'll keep saying, 70% of what people will remember is what they see and what they hear. So pick up the phone, do an online, a Skype, a Zoom, whatever you're using in your organization, put the video on and just tell them what you need to tell them. And that will be way more efficient, way more effective than sending an email that they're not going to see on time, that you're going to get a reply in 3 days, etc. And that, and that might flip through because, there's so many emails in this person's inbox and they haven't really seen yours.
Yeah. You touched on I suppose body language and being able to respond to the reaction that you get from emails. I know that from one of my experiences, I was fairly opposed to, when I was fairly young in the workforce. I'm seeing emojis come out. My initial reaction was, this looks really unprofessional, using emojis and things like that. But it is something that has I've completely changed my mind about. So being able to see like a little face, whether it's the one with its tongue poking out, or a little wink type of thing, just to get that get the emotion across, the idea that you might be a bit tongue in cheek, or you're taking it essentially from essentially good intentions, like a point of good intentions if you're trying to criticize something, and those type of things. I've found that despite my initial reaction thinking it might be somewhat unprofessional, it actually works incredibly well in terms of communicating those subtleties that you don't normally get in terms of text communication. So that's
emojis been used in psychology for quite some time, for a long time, and they're a great way to communicate emotions, and there's a way why psychologists use them. So I think, yes, they might make you laugh at first, but I think they're a great little tool. Again, always think, what are you trying to achieve? What's the right tool? What's the right platform? So I think all these things are, and just, there's a lot of things in the toolbox of the digital communicator. A lot of different things, a lot of different platforms. So just use them, play with them. And like I said, just start little, but just, and just grow from there. And I think, it's not about being, just going out and doing everything at once. It's just, choose your channel, try a few things, and test what works, what doesn't. Again, the beauty of using the video is that you can see the reaction of the person, and I think that's extremely important. I think whether you're in the physical or in the digital world, being aware of the emotions of the person that you're talking to is really crucial.
Yeah, because I mean, before this whole thing happened, like communication was quite a complex web, wasn't it? So obviously you don't just communicate with people via email. There's all kinds of interactions, whether it's having a coffee or meeting in a conference room and having a chat about whether it's your kids or something like that before the meeting starts. It's quite a complex thing in terms of communicating and building those relationships within the workplace, isn't it?
Yeah, and I suppose I'll have a question for you, Michael. How you think? Oh, why are you asking me a question? I think how do you feel you've adapted to really communicating? I mean, it is, and like you say, it's quite different to build a relationship with someone when you're not able to be with them in that in that cafe or around the coffee table and having that sort of casual chat. So how have you adapted, and how what do you think has been sort of the learning for you in that period or since this started?
For me, I'm a fairly naturally outgoing kind of person. So I've generally been fairly interactive with people. But one thing I have noticed is that since we've shifted to a bit more of a digital communication, there are those the whether it's introverted people or whether it's people that are too busy often to have those the one-on-one interactions that last a long time. They're often I don't know whether it's that we've got a little bit more time on our hands, or whether we're more open to the new opportunities of using these new technologies to communicate. That I'm certainly opening up avenues of communication with people that I would normally have not had those kind of in-depth discussions with. I know coming out of these webinars, even like I've done quite a few follow-up calls with people from councils, and just having a chat with them about their experience during this time, and yeah, the level of communication from people that I normally wouldn't have, just through the fact that we're using these new technologies and it's becoming more the norm. Yeah, it's certainly opened up avenues to whether it's people who are often just stuck in a purchasing office somewhere, and they're looking at all the accounts, or it could be somebody potentially with a disability who normally wouldn't be able to get out and about. Get involved in those type of interactions. Now because everyone's doing it, everyone's using the technologies that they can use. It means that they can get involved in those type of things. So that's a really interesting change from my perspective. Is that we seem to be becoming a bit more inclusive about who can interact on those type of levels.
Yeah. It's definitely a good point that you're making here. That all of a sudden it doesn't really matter where you are located. I mean, I remember the struggles of traveling through to smaller regional councils, and I've got great memories of actually traveling to those places and discovering some beautiful places in Australia.
Yeah.
But it was challenging, and we sometimes it's hard to meet with them as often as we would like. And so I think just putting everyone on the same level and just going, now I've got time for everyone, no matter where you are or whether you can travel or not, or, how much time you've got on your hand. Well, guess what? Digital really has put everyone on the same level. So
yeah, all of a sudden the person in the middle of outback New South Wales or outback Queensland is the same, I suppose, the same level of reachability. I don't know whether that's a word or not, but the same accessibility as somebody who's in a major office in a city. So
yeah, absolutely,
it's really interesting.
Absolutely.
And I suppose that comes. There's a technology side of that as well. So there are companies. I know that Calix is very heavily involved in leveraging data and things like that. So being able to, it's not necessarily just communication with people, but it could be communication with devices and things like this. So I know
absolutely. We talk so much about communicating with people, and I think everyone's getting the point. But I think for me, the link to the future is, and another great advantage of this digital world is where we can no longer just communicate with people and customers, but we can actually communicate with their systems. So through the use of SCADA, for example. But I can think of so many different things that we're currently working on, trying to connect to the different systems, and being able to communicate with those systems means that we can optimize our customer site. We can deepen the knowledge that we've got of our customer site, and I think that's and not just of their site, but also of our product. Our product will react differently in different environments, and so gaining that knowledge, let's be honest, it's not like we can have one person at a site 24/7 doing that. So the digital technology has allowed us to open the doors to so many different opportunities, and it is completely linked to communications, absolutely. And I think for me, from a customer knowledge perspective, I want to know my customers' personality. I want to know their site-specific requirements. I want to know what solution they've been using in the past, what challenges they're facing, etc., how I can help them. But I also want a really good understanding of what is actually happening at their site. And sometimes that is a great learning experience, not just for me, but also for them. And it's this idea of being a partner rather than being a supplier. So all of a sudden you're together hand in hand, watching what's happening in their system, and again, hand in hand, trying to find solutions for the different challenges that you're facing as a partner, really.
Yeah, it does highlight how important it is to have not just necessarily people that can supply you with stuff, but people that understand the systems you're working with, and whether it's essentially being able to be a trusted advisor who's familiar with systems that are like yours, but are able to listen and understand the specific challenges that you're facing in your system. I know that within Calix we do spend a lot of time thinking about how we can best not necessarily supply the customer with a product like ActiMag and magnesium hydroxide, but how that's being applied within their network and what challenges they might face because of unique situations, whether it's because I know I'm working on a project at the moment where it's up in the snowfields. So they've got a specific problem where there's a lot of chemicals which freeze at temperatures above zero. Like I know caustic freezes at about 13 degrees, and so those type of things are completely inappropriate and in an area where it gets really cold. Otherwise you end up with a solid block of caustic soda, which is not great. But being able to leverage the technical expertise, not just somebody you can call up and say, hey, could you please send me 1,000 litres of chemical X. So how have we kind of...
I think that is what makes our difference, Michael. I think I keep saying, on and on, I've been here for years now, and I keep saying we're not product supplier guys, we are engineers. We solve problems. That's what we do. And I think, when I look back at this whole communication experience and how we've adapted to the situation, coming up with webinars. I think we were one of the first companies to come up with webinars, and it was just such a great feeling to see, oh wow, like we're at the forefront of this whole webinar wave that's coming. And today everyone's doing webinars.
It's a bit overwhelming now, isn't it? Yeah.
Exactly. But it's quite nice to think, oh, we were, very quickly, not only we thought about them, but we were able to implement them. And it's not like we are, expert in webinars, but by, getting together, leveraging each other's experiences, strengths, we were able to put all of that together. And so I think that really, for me, that is highlighting what we do best at Calix, which is we've got a problem, how do we solve it? And thinking outside the box, at no point in our history we were a service provider of webinars, right? It is not something that we've ever done.
Yeah.
But it was, we've got a problem, and this problem is how do we keep communicating and engaging with our customers? And let's come up with a solution and let's make it happen. And I think that's pretty much, why we're being so successful in the marketplace is because, not of the technology, not of the product alone, but really by our ability to solve problems, to solve our customers' challenges. And yeah, you said it right. I think it's what I think that's what makes Calix a bit of a different company.
It does have a unique feel to it when you're working for Calix, doesn't it? It is quite different. It's not just we're not just here to make the money. We're here to solve the challenges, aren't we? Yeah. So I suppose it does beg the question that if you're a company looking for a certain chemical or something like that to solve a problem, you're going to have to approach a trusted advisor, aren't you? So to get the advice and to get the expertise while keeping that professional distance. So what is your advice if I was looking for a chemical or to solve my problem in terms of pH control or alkalinity control, alkalinity adjustment? What would your advice be?
I'd probably say, don't go and look for a product supplier. Look for a partner. Look for a company that can actually help you solve your challenges. And it might be that for a start you haven't really looked at the problem. With a different perspective. So the partner is here to bring another perspective into place. And also, a partner will not be a product supplier. That means he's not going to try to sell you the product no matter what. He'll go and solve the solution. And that might be, happy days selling his product, great. But that might mean not selling anything at all or selling a competitive product.
Yeah.
And to a certain extent, that is the big difference in between a product supplier and a solution partner. So that's what I would say. If you're looking for a chemical for your product, for your system, just make sure that you choose the right solution partner, someone that's going to think about the problem that you're facing, and that's going to give you a solution, not a product.
Yeah, it's a really good point, because I know out in the, I mean, I was working for mining companies and that before I came to Calix, and I know that when we were looking for, say, a chemical, we would have people in and they'd essentially push sell their products. So it was a bit of a challenge, and you'd feel like you were being ripped off all the time as well, because.
And even for the company, Michael, as you would know, it's not a good long-term strategy, because if you're selling a product that doesn't do the job, or for a start, you're not going to keep that customer. You're not going to keep them happy, and and it's really not good advertising for you. So I think positioning yourself as a solution provider, making sure that you're working with your customer to solve their issues, and almost detaching yourself from the product sales is really, I think it's a much better long-term strategy for sales. Definitely.
Yeah, that's a really good point. So I suppose as a with the partner that you're looking for, solutions partner, it's kind of really important to have that innovative mindset, isn't it? And the ability to really understand the analysis, understand the data, get the information off the systems, and be able to accurately represent what problem is occurring, to analyse the problem, and then move through to a as you said, a solution that doesn't necessarily involve the product that the people are selling. So.
Yeah, absolutely, and I think that's a great advantage that we've got here at Calix, is we're not in a single market. We've got a range of different products and solutions for a range of different markets, and that really helps us to bring in a lot of different perspectives. And at times, someone involved with the wastewater industry might ask someone else involved with the agriculture industry to come in and help, and that gives a good range of different perspectives, and allows us to really solve challenges a little bit more efficiently than someone that is that has a narrower view of things. Yeah, definitely. I think that plays in our favor. The other thing that is part of our values here at Calix is we say we don't change for the sake of changing, and I think that's quite an important value, because sometimes you look at you look at a site, or you look at a specific situation, and you think there's a side of a part of you that's going, oh yeah, I could change that and change that, but in reality, you've got to always think, is that going to be bringing the best outcome for my customers, or for myself, or for this situation? And sometimes it's not. Sometimes changing for the sake of change is not necessarily the best outcome.
Occasionally you hear the terminology, things like innovation or continuous improvement and things like that, and it can be applied in a way that is detrimental to the situation, can't it? So it is. You're right.
Exactly.
It is quite important to know where and when to apply the changes.
Yeah, absolutely. So thinking outside the box, being innovative, yes, 100%. But we're not just changing things for the sake of change. We're changing them because we've analyzed the situation, analyzed the site, really, looked at it as with many different hats and perspectives as we could, and we believe that's the right change. But if there's you would know there's plenty of times where we just go, what you're doing is good. Yeah. Keep doing it, and that's fine too.
Yeah, I suppose what it boils down to, and I know this is going to sound a bit cheesy because it is like the Calix motto, but solving the challenges, solving the problems, just keeping an eye on I suppose an eye on the prize, making sure that you're not not just churning for the sake of churning, but you're putting all of your effort in the direction to actually solve the problem. Yeah.
Absolutely.
So I know I'm just conscious that we're going on a little bit, not too long, but we're approaching the end of our time here. So if you had some pieces of advice for people who want to improve their communication during the pandemic and potentially moving forward, because the situation's not necessarily going to go back to normal straight away. What would it boil down to for you? What pieces of advice would you want somebody to take away from this webinar?
I would say that, like you said, some things have very, very rapidly changed in the last few weeks, few months. And, you know, although a lot of us, many of us are, you know, really impatient for things to go back to what we say normal. So, oh yeah, I want it back to normal, business as normal, business as usual, travel as usual, you know. But what I'd say is some things are here, some of the changes are here to stay. You know, there's the way we work more digitally, the way we meet, the way we communicate, all of these things are here to stay. And yes, we will be back to traveling. Yes, we will be back to going face to face with our customers, 100%. Yes, we will go back to having real conferences with people where we can have a beer afterwards, etc. But some of those changes will stay, will remain. There will be more people working remotely. There will be more online events. There will be more people on social media using social media as a way to, as we said, sell themselves and communicate and share knowledge. And so what I would say is get onto it, and you know, do not be scared of the digital space. I think it is a great space. I think there's a lot of advantages. If you know, just go and learn. There's enough resources out there to teach yourself. You know, this webinar is one thing, but there's a lot of them out there to learn, to understand how it applies to you, to your industry. And I think also because, you know, there is a shift in the way we are communicating, managers and organizations also understand that. And, you know, there's a lot of managers and a lot of organizations out there that are starting to put all those tools in place, training and etc. So yes, go and ask for help, learn, and really just, you know, come in and participate to this new way of communicating and working together.
It's really about engaging and in the new style of communication.
Exactly, and it's great. I mean, you know, it's I think it's a great way to work together. As you said, you know, it brings a little bit of equality. You know, when not all of us can travel as much, and not all of us, you know, are in big cities and etc. So technology really brings everyone, you know, to the same level. So I think that's great. I think also, you know, when you're not traveling as much, then you have more time to talk to people. And just like you said before, I think it was the same for me. I mean, on a personal level, I have spent a lot of time with family and friends on calls online, and you know, having long conversations on different topics, and I think that's something that you can do at the professional level as well. You know, if you're no longer having coffee with them every morning, well, then just do it digitally. You know, go get yourself a coffee and call a colleague and share some thoughts, share some knowledge.
Yeah, I've got to admit, it's a bit of a cultural shift, isn't it? Even in the workplaces. I mean, I've spoken to even people within Calix who are located halfway across the world, whether it's you know, project managers over in Europe, or the CEO of the president of IER over in the US, which is Inland Environmental Resources, which is a company that Calix recently acquired. So
I think what you know, we can conclude on is you know, when I say I like to see us as a solution partner, I also mean it. And I've had, through this webinar series, I've had calls from different customers asking for help on how to log in, and you know, and I think that's where, you know, if we want to be a real community of, you know, like-minded professionals, then, well, why not, you know? And I did, you know, get those, I did call them back, and I did help them to log in and see how the chat was working, and I'd be more than happy to continue to do so, because I think there's you know, it's there is a little bit of a learning curve for some people, and so for those of us that have the expertise, have the knowledge, then I think it's almost a duty that we have to, take our colleagues or our customers or partners by the hand and just, and let them join the digital world, right? So that no one is left behind.
Yeah, it certainly is a bit of a cultural shift, isn't it? People have new skills to learn and new ways to engage and share. So it's going to be a challenge, but also hopefully it'll let everyone to give everyone more tools to be able to communicate and more effectively and more widely within their organisation and also externally as well. I mean, we talked about water authorities, sharing information. I mean, they're not private companies and that trying to keep all their intellectual property to themselves. A lot of these industries really benefit from sharing information between the water authorities or between councils. Yeah.
Absolutely. Yeah. Absolutely.
Okay. Look, we might finish it up there. We'll obviously take some questions as well. So hopefully there's been a few questions come in during the webinar. We'll hopefully we'll transition over to a Q&A session after this, but certainly if you've got questions about communication and that, you can put it in the chat box on the side. If you don't feel comfortable with that as well, we're more than willing to help out. I'm sure Audrey is, as I said, a phenomenal communicator and an expert when it comes to whether it's marketing or personal branding. She certainly helped me out personally a lot in terms of developing me as a professional, but also my communication skills. I mean, coming from, I'm a chemical engineer, so you would imagine the communication skills I had 5 years ago when I was in the Calix operations and engineering divisions. It was my communication skills were fairly poor, but Audrey has certainly helped me out. So I think she can help a lot of people out if they're wanting to get online and ask some questions. So. Look, thank you.
Yeah, thank you very much. Yeah, thank you very much, Michael. Thanks for the comments. And yes, absolutely, very, very happy to help anyone. I always do make a bit of time for that. So yeah, absolutely. And thank you again for the webinar. It's a great opportunity to engage with customers on a different topic, I suppose.
Yeah, absolutely. Okay. All right. Thank you, Audrey. And we'll just transition over to questions and. Please drop some questions in the chat. If you don't feel comfortable there, get in contact with us via the website. So it's calix.global. Go to the Contact Us section and you can send us a message, or there's even a little chat bot. So if you go to the Calix website, you'll see Audrey's face pop up from the bottom. So yeah, get in touch. That is literally Audrey talking to you. It's not going to be a robot or some kind of other bot that's chatting to you. It is actually Audrey on the other end of the chat interface. So she's there for you if you want to have a chat. But yeah, let's look, Audrey. Thank you very much, and we'll just transition over to the Q&A section.
Thank you, Michael.
Okay, let's have a quick look at. Sorry, a bit of an echo there. Let's have a quick look at the chat. Doesn't look like we've got any chats come in at the moment. No. Okay, look. I suppose I just wanted to say, first of all, thanks very much, Audrey. She is known as, she's got the nickname of the Oracle in our organisation, and she certainly earned that nickname. Audrey is fantastic when it comes to communication. She's always thinking ahead about the new situations and new ways to do things. As you can tell from these webinars, we are trying to find new ways of working with our customers, new techniques of communication. So any suggestions that you can make, whether it's through the chat on the side after the webinar's finished, or emailing me directly, or contacting us via the website, that would be fantastic. I hope this webinar has been of use to you. As I said, you can get in touch. You can get advice directly from Audrey or myself. We've got an upcoming webinar in 2 weeks' time. So that's Thursday, not next week, but the week after. It's around a case study for wastewater. So if you're in the wastewater industry, council or water authority, this one will be a great one to tune into. It's a webinar that's focused on it's around the cutting edge technology that they're using in Tasmania to control odour or toxic gases that are generated through wastewater systems, and the way Taswater and our partner Netco is dealing with that. I'm hoping to get an interview with Nathan Cruikshank, who's the manager of Netco down in Tasmania, and they are at the cutting edge of this type of technology. So thank you very much for the webinar. I'll just double check to make sure there's no other questions. So no questions have come in as yet. So look, thank you very much for joining us, and we hope to see you again in a couple of weeks' time. Thanks very much.
Calix was founded in 2005 by myself and a Queenslander named Colin Hawley. He had a great idea for a new type of kiln or furnace. As Connor and I developed the idea, it became apparent that the technology had the potential to be applied to many industries and could help address some of the world's most pressing problems. We raised some money, did some small-scale testing, and gave some great results, encouraged us to build a commercial-scale facility at Bacchus Marsh in Victoria. The Calix Flash Calciner, or CFC process, involves grinding minerals or other feedstocks to between 1/100th and 1,000th of a millimetre in size, then flash heating them in an externally heated reactor in a very short time, up to about 950 degrees centigrade. As trapped gases in the material bubble out through the particles, they create highly porous structures. These particles are then cooled very quickly, leaving a very porous, honeycomb-like structure. New materials produced by the CFC are proven to have similar reactive properties to nanoparticles, without the safety concerns and high costs, but with all the benefits that nanotechnology is developing into numerous products, applications and markets.
I joined Calix in 2013 because I could sense the huge potential of this technology. It's a platform technology that has two sides: production of nanoactive materials on the one hand, and the potential to be applied in CO2 capture on the other. Our first commercial product was released in 2013 for wastewater treatment, followed closely by two more products in 2014, one for infrastructure protection and a specialty chemical additive. All these products are now in export. In addition to our commercial products, we also have some pre-commercial products already in paid trials in Asia and Europe that look really exciting. One's a water conditioner to help with yields and environmental problems in aquaculture. And the others are non-toxic, environmentally friendly, broad-spectrum crop protection products. We also have a rich research and development pipeline with some really exciting developments in advanced batteries as well as CO2 capture for the lime and cement industries.
Additionally, if the materials have trapped CO2, the technology can separate that CO2 directly for no additional energy penalty. For example, limestone by weight is approximately 50% CO2, which is released as a gas when making lime, and is therefore why the cement and lime industries are very CO2 intensive. Application of the technology in CO2 mitigation is thus of interest to those industries.
And we're piloting these programs with over 25 million in funding from Australian and European governments. And we are working with some of the world's largest companies in these areas. Having proven its commercial products and business models, Calix is about to embark on some serious market entries into the US, Europe and Asia to grow its revenues and margins. We will also continue to develop our pre-commercial products into fully fledged commercial products and processes through both direct and distribution sales and licensing strategies. And lastly, we'll continue to develop the multitude of high potential R&D applications into some of the world's fastest growing industries. Calix really is all about creating new materials and processes to solve global challenges.